Do you have grandparents? I say that as a 26-year-old. Anybody older than me? Do you have parents? Are they old? Do you know old people? Do you have, like, on anyone? I don't know. Do people have friends that are just, like, 40 years older than them? I don't know, maybe. You have a friend who just happens to be double your age? I do, I guess. I have friends who were, like, triple my age. If I count people that watch my show as friends, which maybe, possibly. But anyway, to anyone with old people in their life, you're not going to have old people in your life for too much longer. A COVID-19 senior wave is driving up hospitalizations. You got a grandma, you got a grandpa, you better say goodbye on the telephone while you still can, because that motherfucker is dying. Tick, tick, tick. Life expectancy in this country, by the way, has cratered. Several years of a drop of life expectancy in the United States of America. So just throwing that out there. When Linda Stewart felt a tickle in her throat a few weeks ago, she got worried. She's a 76-year-old woman, and she was well aware of the risks posed to her and her husband's health by COVID-19 flu and other colds that were sweeping the United States amid a rough respiratory virus season. Quote, "I don't want to take any chances with my health." She said, throughout the pandemic, a positive COVID-19 test for a senior has carried an extra heavy weight. Only about 13% of all reported cases in the United States have been among people 65 and older, according to data from the US CDC. But about half of all hospitalizations and 3/4 of all deaths have been in this age group. The COVID-19 hospitalization rate for seniors has generally risen and fallen in line with broader trends, reaching a record high last winter during the Omicron surge and dropping significantly in the summer. But compared with other age groups, hospitalization rates have consistently been higher among the 65 and older population. Now, I am no tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. But, isn't it interesting that as soon as you start collecting Social Security from the government or your pension from a private company, whatever, is when your risk of death is skyrocketing? Isn't that interesting? Just think about it. That's a little interesting. That as soon as you hit retirement age, all of a sudden, you're in the most likely to die age demographic. Now, I don't know. That's a little weird. It's a little strange. You know, what would private companies, capitalist parties, and the government have to gain from killing people off that are collecting passive income from them? Think about this from the government's perspective. Now, the government is an evil entity. We know that. If you pay attention to the world at all, you'll understand that the government is evil. It is a corrupt hellhole full of narcissists. And again, isn't it interesting? You hit retirement age. You're supposed to live your golden years. Except you're old and your body doesn't work that well anymore because you spent the last 65 fucking years destroying your body to work for capitalists. Right? I don't know, man. Personally, I think that's a little weird. I'm just food for thought. Food for thought. I'm not making any claims here. I'm just saying it's a little interesting. Now let's get back here. This winter, COVID-19 trends are again on the rise across the country. So far, the increase appears to be relatively mild. Hospitalizations are ticking up in most states, although the overall rate is still just a fraction of what it was during other surges. Now, again, what the fuck is this fucking shit? So far, the increase appears to be relatively mild. Like, how? Now, again, CNN is a right-wing outlet. So, how how is it possible that rates are increasing and they're going to still do minimalization? Okay, we're in the middle of a surge. We're surging right now. It's getting really bad, but it's getting really bad in kind of like a mild way, you know? What? But for older adults, the situation is much more severe. Hospitalizations among seniors are nearing the peak from Delta surge and rising fast. I gotta say this. I am glad to be 26 years old during the COVID-19 pandemic. Under 18s, 92% of under 18s in this country have been infected with COVID-19 at least once. We don't know how many have had repeat infections, but if you've ever seen a public school, chances are a lot of repeat infections are happening. Right? So under 18s, they're fucked. They're fucked. They're fucked. They were forced to go through a medical experiment against their will. They were experimented on by the US government in the form of not being protected from an easily preventable pandemic. Easily preventable. Easily preventable. Vaccines, lockdown, masking, easily preventable. America chose not to do that, and now almost all children in this country have been infected. Now, what is the 8% that haven't been infected yet? Those are probably toddlers and infants that just haven't been to public school yet. Let's be honest, right? So think about that. Under 18s, they are fucked. And then the old people, they're fucked. They spent their whole life working for this system. And now, as soon as they hit retirement, this system is trying as hard as it can to murder them. Isn't that just, like, what? It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, this shit that we're dealing with here in this country is crazy. I mean, I don't know, man. You talk about luck. I'll tell you this much. Being 26 right now, feeling pretty lucky. Hey, I'm going to be honest. Feeling pretty lucky. I'm nervous to get old. I'm nervous to hit retirement age. Who knows what the government's going to throw at me by the time I retire? I don't know what I'm going to retire from. But hey. The age gap has never been wider. Since October, the COVID-19 hospitalization rate among seniors has been at least 4 times higher than average. Even during the first winter surge in 2020, when COVID-19 took a devastating sweep through nursing homes, there was never more than a 3-fold difference. So, let's look at this. October 30, December 18. What is it? Okay, 2021, December 18. So what do we have knowledge here? December 3. So let's look at December 3 here. All right, December 4. Right? We have a 33.8 on this chart. December 3, we have a 29.2 on this chart. Now, again, this is what they're using to determine that this is mild. About a 4-point difference. Now, what does this chart measure? Weekly hospital admissions per 100,000. Okay. So a 4-point difference. Now, is 4 points, you know, it's a difference. It's measurable. It's a difference. But factor this in. Factor in that a lot of people who were hospitalized last year are dead. Are dead. They're dead. So they can't be hospitalized again this year. Because they died already. Right? They're already dead. So the people dying now are a different group of people. A different group of people. Now, again, 65 and older is the demographic and more likely to die now. But think about this. 10 years out, 5 years out. Are we just going to deal with a mass extinction of the elderly every year? I mean, hey, that's what flu season basically was anyway. But think about this. Now, I say this sincerely. If you have anyone in your life above the age of 60 or 50, give them a call. They're not going to be here much longer. I'm being honest. This is an honest reading of the world. We are going through a mass, purposeful genocide of the elderly, the disabled, the immunocompromised. That's what we're going through. Now, I say purposefully. Does that mean that they created the virus and they spread it through the waters? No. But they can prevent it. The government could have prevented it and chose not to. If you know there's a hurricane coming and you don't tell anybody and 30 people die in the hurricane, that was a purposeful, desired outcome, right? So I just want to say this much. I see this, right? December 4, 33.8. And then I look at this. Then I look at this. Now, we don't have that data yet. At least according to the CDC and CNN. We don't have the data yet. But, 4-point difference from December 4 to December 3. I mean, just going by the numbers, we're still going to see a giant surge. But wait, I have good news. The CDC stopped counting cases. They stopped. They gave up. They threw in the towel. So we're not going to see the surge until people start dying. Hospitalizations and deaths are lagging indicators. They are lagging indicators. You get infected with COVID. A week later, you have COVID, you have symptoms, you're sneezing, you're coughing, you can't breathe. Within the next week, you go to the hospital. That's 2 weeks after infection. You're struggling in the hospital. Eventually, your struggle ends. You die. Maybe 2.5, maybe 3 weeks after infection. Right? So when we see hospitalizations, now again, this number going down last year, this number is not going down because people recovered. This number is going down because this chart measures hospitalizations. Right? When you die in the hospital, you are no longer hospitalized. So this gives us no information on how many people recovered. So when you see this, right, this peak from January 15, 22, and then all the way down to this low from April 2, 2022, this is not a good thing. This just means a shitload of people died and are no longer occupying hospital space. Right? So again, I guess America has decided we don't need old people. If you live in America, your life expectancy, let's be honest, you shouldn't expect to make it out of your 30s if you live in this country. You shouldn't expect to make it out of your 20s if you live in this country. Hey, 92% of under 18s have gotten infected with COVID. I saw this recently that suicide is actually one of the leading causes of death in the age range of 5 to 14. Now, hey, raise your hand if you tried to kill yourself when you were 14 years old, right? So I feel it. But think about this. How much prevalence is suicide going to have in a society when people at the age of 12 can't taste candy anymore? When they can't go outside and play because they have joint pain? Hey, I'm just saying, COVID-19 leads to suicide. It's just a fact. I've seen a lot of people over the course of the last couple years, not personally, not like friends of mine, but, through stories in the media, through friends of friends, people that have killed themselves because they couldn't taste food for a year. Imagine going a year of your life without being able to taste food. Yeah, I'd think about killing myself too. So, suicides in this country are skyrocketing, but we're not going to do anything about suicides. As a country, we deal with 50,000 suicides every year in this country. 50,000. That was before COVID-19. Before the pandemic, I should say. Isn't that crazy? We're just okay with that? 50,000 people a year are killing themselves? No problem to be found. Isn't that a little strange? According to worldwide statistics, 700,000 people kill themselves every year, according to worldwide statistics. Can you blame them? I mean, look at what life has to offer. You are forced at gunpoint to go into medical experimentation camps when you're a child to learn a bunch of propagandistic garbage that's unnecessary and unhelpful. I'm talking about school. After school, you go to college. Unless you're poor, then you go directly into the workforce. And then you work for 50 fucking years until you retire or die of old age, of diseases that you picked up that destroyed your body throughout your working career, or because there's another pandemic. That's America. What's the point? What is the point? I'm asking sincerely, why not commit suicide if this is what this country has to offer? You go to work at a dead-end job for 40 years and then you die? That's it? That's all we're allowed to have in this fucking shithole? And now you have to work 40 years having a mass disabling event? 92% of people under the age of 18 are going to get disabled in some fashion. In some fashion. Now again, it's possible that a good chunk of them are going to fully recover within 5 to 10 years and they're good to go. It's possible, but that's not going to be the majority. So I don't know, man. I look at all of this stuff and I'm thinking, now, I will tell you this much. If I was working in retail, I'd be gone already. I'm just saying, I would have checked out. The fact that I work from home is the only way that I can prosper in any capacity. Any other option to me, hey, I'm not saying anything, but giving you some context clues. Anyway, back to the old people. Now, what the hell is this fucking shit? Dr. Eric Topol, a physician and professor of molecular medicine at Scripps Research, has dubbed the ongoing rise the senior wave. Oh, wow. Right now, we have an immunity wall built up against the Omicron family between shots and prior infections and combinations thereof that seem to be keeping younger folks in pretty good stead, but the immune systems of people of advanced age are not as strong. Now, I want to talk a little bit about experts in media. CNN is a right-wing organization. Their goal is to minimize and, whenever possible, deny that there is a pandemic. But sometimes the news makes that a little difficult. So what they do is they have a Rolodex of contacts. And they phone up or email up everybody that they can until they find someone that's willing to give them a quote that fits their article. And Dr. Eric Topol, in this instance, is the scumbag of the day. He's willing to sell his credits as a physician and a doctor to minimize the pandemic's deadly behavior. Younger folks in pretty good stead. Now, again, there's a lot going on here in this sentence. This is medical disinformation. This person should not be allowed to be a physician or a professor of anything. Because this is a dumb shit for brains asshole. Seems. The word seems here is doing a lot of work. So there's no proof that younger folks are in pretty good stead. It just seems that way. Now I ask you this question. Why is it that older people have worse immune systems? It's because over the course of their life, they get damaged in multiple ways by multiple sorts of viruses, diseases, poor diet maybe, injuries, whatever. Throughout life, a lot of people collect a lot of injuries. And it doesn't need to be like in a physical trauma. You don't need to like fall off a cliff or something. But, a virus can cause an injury to your body in some way. So I ask you this question. If you get COVID as a young adult and you're in, quote, pretty good stead, but your immune system is shreked and you have the immune system of a 70-year-old when you're 43, is that pretty good stead? Why would a doctor say this? I mean, I'm serious. That's crazy shit. Quote, but the immune systems in people of advanced age are not as strong. Okay, no shit. So people are going to get their immune systems more destroyed more quickly. And that's good news. Huh. Wow. Isn't that great? Wow. So once again, when you see experts cited in media, especially places like CNN, what they do is they will ask dozens and dozens and dozens of people for a quote, and they will pick the one that is the most fitting of their narrative. In this instance, Dr. Eric Topol is the daily dumb fuck, the daily dullard in the medical industry. Younger adults who are immunocompromised are also likely experiencing disproportionately severe effects of the latest wave, he said, but there isn't sufficient data to understand trends in that population as well. What the fuck does this mean? Now, notice, by the way, that this is not a quote. So we don't know what Dr. Eric Topol said to this effect. We don't have the quote. When media goes on and they paraphrase what people are saying instead of giving us the quote, that's because the quote goes against their narrative in some way, so they find it easier to paraphrase it, playing a game of telephone. They have the quote. When they say this, think about this, from the media, from the journalist, quote-unquote, perspective, when they say this paragraph, it indicates that they have a quote and they are not publishing it. Now, if they quoted him and then gave this interpretation after the quote, that's one thing. But they are keeping the quote hidden. Younger adults who are immunocompromised are likely experiencing disproportionately severe effects in the latest wave. They're likely experiencing it? What? What does that mean, they're likely experiencing it? That's like saying, if you shoot a hurricane and bullets are flying around in the hurricane, it is likely that the bullets are going to impact people and kill them. We don't know. It's likely. Now, again, I'm referencing reports from Florida where people were shooting assault weapons at the hurricane, and then bullets actually were flying through the hurricane to the point where they actually killed other people in different parts of the city. So, you can look that up. Is that a super frequent phenomenon? I'm not sure, but I thought that was a fun analogy. But anyway. But, quote, the main culprit is booster deficiency with rates that are woefully inadequate. He said it all points to waning immunity. If more seniors had their booster, the effect would be minimal. So again, get your booster shot. If you haven't gotten your booster shot, I'm telling you this right now. I'm the bearer of bad news. If you are eligible, and by eligible I mean medically speaking, you can have the booster shot, which 99% of Americans can. Some people have specific immunocompromisation disorders where they cannot get certain kinds of vaccines. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about everyone else. The only numbers I've seen on bivalent booster intake or uptake, I don't know, is about 15%. Now, again, I haven't seen any new numbers on that, and I'm sure that there are, so if someone wants to update me, that's great. So, what? Now, again, this is all in a country where, for the first time, we have free, effective, safe healthcare, and 85% of the country is like, nah. I'm sorry, if you're eligible to get the booster shot and you haven't yet, you are worse, and I say this very sincerely and without a hint of irony, you are worse than any of the 9/11 hijackers. You are a terrible person. If you are eligible for the booster shot and haven't gotten it yet, it's been out for 4 months, you are as bad as a 9/11 hijacker. What is my logic? Well, 9/11 hijackers, pretty bad people. But they only killed 3,000. We get 3,000 kills in this country every week with COVID-19. So my argument is if we get a 9/11 every week and you've been walking around for months or years without doing your duty to protect people, you are worse than a 9/11 suicide bomber. You're going to die at some point. Let's be honest. Going around there without a vaccination, without a booster, without a mask on, you're going to die at some point. Your clock is ticking. Right? But it's not about you dying. I have at it. As far as I'm concerned, join the suicide statistic. But it's the fact that these people are going to kill themselves, but they're going to kill other people. They're going to spread the disease to other people. They're going to go to their parents' house uninvited and give them a disease. They're going to go somewhere else and like breathe really hard at the cashier's face, and it's going to go through their mask or whatever, and then they're going to go. So I'm just saying this. If you haven't gotten your vaccine yet, you are worse. Not equal to, but worse than a 9/11 hijacker. Or even, I would go as far as to say, all of them combined. Although that one I would need to do a little bit more number crunching on. And I'm talking to conservatives, I'm talking to liberals, I'm talking to leftists, I'm talking to communists. Now again, imagine this. There are people in the United States, not many people, but there are people that literally will call themselves communists or socialists, and yet they are anti-vaccine. They imagine being a communist. What is communism? Community. Socialism. What is the root of socialism? Social. Community. Helping each other. Right? Being there for one another. There are communists in this country that are against vaccines. Free, safe, effective healthcare that can stop the spread of a deadly disease. And even communists in this country are against that shit. So my opinion is, if you call yourself a communist and you haven't gotten vaccinated, guess what? You're a fascist. I don't know what to tell you. What is fascism? What are the tenets of the Nazi Party? Think about it. Oh, we want the greatest thing in the world, healthcare. We want the best food in the world. We want the best everything, but only for my people. That's what fascism is. It's hoarding all the resources for one specific group, usually an ethnic group, at the expense of everyone else. So if you're a so-called communist and you want to go out and kill people that are disabled, that are immunocompromised, that are elderly, I'm just asking you a question. How can you maintain being a communist while also maintaining that you are actively engaging in a genocide of disabled people, poor people, elderly people? Poor people are more disproportionately likely to get infected with COVID. They're also disproportionately more likely to have worse health outcomes. Why? Because they're disproportionately more likely to be working in retail, service industries, being higher at risk because they deal with more people on the day-to-day, right? And they are also poor, so they can't go to the doctor as early as maybe people that are rich would, right? So communists in this country, so-called, self-described in this country, and I'm talking about, I know I'm ranting and raving here, but it blows my mind. I've said this before. DSA chapters across the country, Democratic Socialists of America, are debating whether or not to have a mask-on policy. Now, a lot of them are doing the right thing, obviously, having a mask-on policy. But there are plenty of DSA chapters all across the country, DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, that are engaging in QAnon conspiracy theories and saying, oh, mask optional. That's not communism. That's fascism. You are actively engaging and supporting a genocide of poor people. Socialists? I thought you loved poor people. I consider myself a communist. I love poor people. I want poor people to be better off in society. So what do? I stay home. I wear a mask when I leave the house. So now again, I'm being nitpicky here. But my point is, this isn't just a conservative thing. Or whatever, again, political labels, they're really difficult to figure out. But what I'm saying is people that vote for Republicans, that's not the only problem. Liberals. Remember Joe Biden? And I say remember, because where the fuck is this guy? Remember Joe Biden when he was running in 2020 Does anyone remember this? And he said, like, something along the lines of, like, 200,000 dead Americans. Anyone who's president where that happens should not be president or whatever. Remember? I mean, talk about tweets that aged poorly. Holy shit, man. Do you remember when Joe Biden said that he's going to handle the pandemic and he's going to fix this country and get us out of the pandemic? He campaigned on that. And now it's worse. Liberals, vaccination rates among liberal politicians, or not politicians, voters, Democratic voters, into the dumpster. Why? Because Joe Biden, their dear leader, is going on mainstream television telling everyone the pandemic's over. I covered this the other day. The so-called White House COVID response coordinator gave an interview. I think it was on MSNBC. It could be CNN. It could be one of the, but I think it was MSNBC. But they gave a TV interview saying Americans aren't getting boosted because they're confused. What? Americans aren't getting a booster shot because they're confused? This is coming from the COVID response coordinator? You're confused? They're confused, I mean? Well, who's confusing them? Maybe it's Joe Biden saying the pandemic is over. And then not mentioning vaccines in any way other than like a tweet here and there. Not mentioning masking. You're not allowed to mask anymore if you're a Democrat. Remember this big thing all across the country? Democratic politicians were like, take off your mask. Remember Kathy Hochul in New York, the governor of New York, did a huge propaganda campaign. Take off your mask. Take off your mask. Democrats, they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about you. Democrats don't care about you at all. Now again, Republicans want to murder specifically minority groups that I happen to be a part of. And so that's the only reason why I think Democrats are better than Republicans. But when it comes to COVID, the most, regardless of your feelings, oh, you're tired of COVID, I'm over it, bro. Oh, really? Regardless of your triggered little whiny snowflake feelings, COVID, like it or not, is probably going to be the biggest historical event you are living through. Now, we could have World War III. We could all die tomorrow with fucking, apparently Vladimir Putin wants to do some like Christmas fucking blitzkrieg or something in Ukraine. Who knows what's going to go on, right? But anyway. But I don't care what your feelings are. Imagine 30 years from now, your grandkids or whatever are going to ask you, what were you doing during the 10-year pandemic? Because who knows what it's going to be called historically, right? We don't have, like, we're calling it the COVID-19 pandemic right now. We're entering year 4. In a week from now, it'll be year 4, maybe a week and a half or so. It'll be year 4. How long is it going to last? 10 years? 15? 20? So imagine you're sitting there with your grandkids. Now, I know this isn't going to happen because these people are going to die during the pandemic, but just bear with me here. And your grandkids are asking, how did you survive the 20-year pandemic? And your answer would be, I voted for Joe Biden and took my mask off and just hoped and prayed, and I'm praying to Jesus every day. I mean, seriously, I mean, like, I don't... It's weird. This fucking shit is strange. And it's not just Americans. China had a good thing going. Now, was it a great thing? Was it a perfect thing? No, not at all. But it was a good thing going with zero COVID. But China, they got some really dumb motherfuckers in charge of that government. Really dumb ass bitches that are in charge in China. Stupid motherfuckers. And so they decided they're going to lift zero COVID without any good vaccination rates. And the vaccine that they have is garbage because they're too proud to import functional vaccines. So they need to start making vaccines from scratch that are better, and the vaccines they have now are garbage. So, guess what? We're probably going to get another mutant strain of this virus any minute now. Any minute now. The B.Q.7.6.9.420. fucking dog strain is coming around the corner. I don't know, man. I say this. We're fucked. Now, again, I have made the decision, and I struggle with this decision. I have decided I'm not getting COVID. I made that decision when the pandemic started. I decided I'm not going to get COVID. I refuse. I recognized my position. I'm able to work from home. I don't really leave the house. I don't really like leaving the house that much to begin with. I made the decision I'm not getting COVID. Now, it's very possible I will get COVID at some point. Very possible. But as we know, repeat infection fucks you up. People that have gotten COVID 5 times, they are fucked compared to people that got COVID 1 time. And if I did get COVID, I know I would have a low viral load because I always leave my house with my mask on. But I decided that I'm not getting COVID. And I struggle. I do. Seeing events, concerts. How many bands I like were doing concerts this year that I would have loved to go to? But I didn't because I didn't want to get COVID. I decided whatever possible experience I would gain from going to a concert is not worth severe theoretical neurological degeneration. I want to go to the movie theater and watch new movies. I want to go to a bar. I want to go to a restaurant. I want to go to festivals. I want to go all over the world and explore, but I'm not because I don't want to get sick. Now, some people will say I'm paranoid. Some people will say I'm being too cautious. But I consider myself to be an artist who is able to function and flourish in my environment as it is. Would I like to go to a bar? Yes. Do I need to? No. I'm an introvert. I would love to do a meetup with my YouTube audience. And I started planning it in 2021, and I'm waiting. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that didn't wait, and they went and did live shows and gave their audience a disease. I'm not going to name names, but you know, if you watch any other podcasters out there, you know which ones had live shows. And a lot of them, you know, hey, I'm not trying to place any blame. A lot of them are spreading COVID. Even if you're trying not to, even if you do testing, there's people that are asymptomatic. You're in a bar with 100 people. All you need is one guy, and boom, a lot of people are getting infected. So I decided I'm not doing that. Why? Why did I make that decision? It would be profitable for me to go out there and do live shows. I would make money. But I don't care about money. I care about my audience's health. But anyway, I don't need to go outside. I'm not like these freaks that, like, you know, they spend 2 minutes inside and they freak the fuck out and want to kill everyone around them. That's not me. So, you know, you can call me paranoid. But hey, I don't know, man. I'm feeling pretty good right now from where I'm sitting. I feel pretty good. I can taste food. I can cook my own food, unlike most Americans. I can taste my food. I can think. I can feel. I can cry. And I can watch movies. I can listen to music. I can draw. I can make things. I can create YouTube videos all from my home. And that's fine for me. Now, I don't know how I'm going to feel in 5 years. In year 8 of this pandemic, or year 9 of this pandemic. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a different opinion. But this idea that it's worth it, that like, oh, it's just obvious. We all need to go outside and kill each other. For what? Like, again, in a logical society, we would have done a 3-month lockdown the virus would be gone, and we'd all be living our lives and doing whatever we want right now. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world with a bunch of cocksuckers and freaks. And so that's why our society is killing off all the old people. Do you remember? This is a long time ago now, ancient history. March 2020. The lieutenant governor of Texas, I think their name is Patrick or some shit, I don't know. The lieutenant governor of Texas went on Fox News and was asked about COVID and the elderly. And the lieutenant governor of Texas said to America that the elderly should feel proud that they can sacrifice themselves so that younger generations don't have to deal with a depression or economic downturn. Democratic politicians at the time, oh, that is crazy. Oh, how dare you? Our elderly, they've fought in our wars. And now, what are Democratic politicians doing? They're doing the same thing. The Dan Patrick strategy. Joe Biden agrees in lockstep with Dan Patrick of March 2020. Joe Biden of March 2020 agreed with Dan Patrick. You might be thinking, what? During the Democratic presidential primary, several states were delaying their primary elections as a way to ride out COVID and potentially fight against it. Joe Biden lobbied against delaying primaries, but that's not all. A lot of these states were delaying primaries. 2020 Democrat, not Republican. There were no Republican primaries. 2020 Democrat primaries. Why? So that they could get mail-in voting infrastructure set up so that people could vote by mail. Now, if anyone remembers the 2020 general election, Trump versus Biden, you'll remember Trump had a huge problem with mail-in ballots. And Joe Biden would make fun of Trump for that obsession. But when push came to shove, Joe Biden in March of 2020 and April lobbied for in-person primary elections. He used his power in the Democratic Party to lobby for in-person primary elections. So Joe Biden, when push came to shove for his primary, hated mail-in ballots. Hated it. He hated mail-in ballots. He didn't want to risk losing to the evil socialist Bernie Sanders. Barack Obama got called up on the phone. Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, they all colluded and conspired to make sure that mail-in ballots didn't happen. To make sure that in-person voting and spreading of the disease did happen. Joe Biden. And then 6 months later, he was like, oh, why is Trump so concerned about mail-in ballots? Joe Biden knew he benefited from mail-in ballots in the general election, and that's why he supported them in the general. Joe Biden knew Bernie Sanders benefited from mail-in ballots in the primary election, and that's why he did not support mail-in voting in the primary. So again, but most Americans are too fucking stupid. They didn't pay attention to this shit. Why? Because they're dumb. They're dumb. They're fucking stupid motherfuckers. By the way, how long is this segment? This is turning into one of those hour-long COVID segments. Holy shit. So again, I don't know, man. Joe Biden, you asked me this question last year, I'd say maybe Donald Trump handled the pandemic worse. Maybe. That was my answer last year. At this point, the maybes are out the window. Joe Biden has handled the pandemic worse than Donald Trump. It's just a fact. It's just a fucking fact. Think about it. Percentage base of the population. Donald Trump could get 30, 40% of the population to do stupid ass shit like hating masks, hating medicine, washing their apples with bleach. Dumbass shit. But those people are crazy anyway. Those are the crazies by default. Those motherfuckers are already crazy. So Donald Trump didn't, like, now again, comparing to what an ideal president would have done, horrible, right? But he didn't get liberals to take their masks off. He didn't get liberals to become anti-vaxxers. Who did? Joe Biden. What is the largest demographic in America? Politically speaking, liberals. Liberals. And I don't mean Democrats, I mean liberals. Right? So there's a lot of liberals that, they're apolitical, they don't really care about politics, but, they're liberals. Let's be honest. They support capitalism pretty much. Maybe they have some criticisms, but over the most part, they're liberals. Liberals are the largest population demographic in this country. And now again, think about this. Donald Trump goes anti-vax, anti-mask. Now, eventually later, when he could claim credit for the vaccine, he was pro-vaccine. But he goes anti-vaccine, anti-mask at the start. Liberals are like, oh shit, I gotta wear my mask. I gotta wear 2 of them. And my mask says, F Donald Trump. So liberals, when they saw that, they went extra hard on pandemic protection and prevention. And conservatives went crazy. But when Joe Biden became president and ordered the CDC to tell everyone to take their masks off, did conservatives flip and go, oh, well, Joe Biden doing it, I want to trigger the libs, I want to wear my mask now? No. So conservatives remained to be crazy. Conservatives retained their insanity. And now liberals are insane. So you ask me, who handled the pandemic better? Now again, we're comparing 2 extremely horrible people, right? We're comparing fucking a lump of dog shit versus a lump of cat shit. So it's hard to tell which one's better, which one's worse. But you ask me why I believe Joe Biden has failed us more than Donald Trump. My answer is only Joe Biden could have convinced Democrats and liberals to take their masks off and to avoid vaccines. There is no universe where Donald Trump gets reelected and liberals take their masks off and turn anti-vax. They would have doubled down. Let's be honest. Liberals are zombies just as much as conservatives. They would have doubled down. Some of them maybe would have peeled off, sure. But a lot of them would have doubled down. Just for branding. I'm resisting. #resist. But then Joe Biden comes along. He's got a D next to his name. And so now the liberals, what's a vaccine? Never heard of them. Booster shot? What's that? Free healthcare? Oh. So, there's your hour-long COVID segment. I don't know, man. We're doomed. So, I don't know what to tell you.